Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Erica and I'm just gonna have a little chatty video for the end of the year / beginning of the year. So this has been delayed a little bit because I had convinced myself that the next video that I needed to post was of me and my daughter in our Merida and Eleanor costumes that I made for Halloween. And that hasn't happened yet. I finished making the costume for myself and my daughter wore it for Halloween, and I still have not actually put on my whole ensemble. And yes, we are on December 31st as of right now. So if you have been on the channel for a little bit, you will know that my grandmother died unexpectedly on Halloween. And that literally threw the rest of my year into unknown territory. And it has been somewhat of a hard couple of months, and I just wanted to come in and chat. So I have a cross stitch I've been working on for a little bit that I'm going to be probably trying to work on while I talk plans and why things haven't happened. And before I get into any of what I'm about to say, I know 100% I don't owe anyone an explanation as to why I've disappeared for the last 2 months. I lost my grandmother and nobody really even needed that reason, but this is something that I've wanted to do. I enjoy this channel and I want to, in some capacity, keep it up. And however, I think I've been doing myself a disservice in trying to keep up with a costuming channel, sewing channel, whatever thing, which is fine, but that's not exactly why I started this channel in the first place, and I'm gonna get into that in a minute. So here we are, and I haven't even done a stitch yet. So for reference and a starting point, and my instructions are over here, so if you see me looking over there, that's what I'm doing. I briefly started a second channel where I started telling my story of my childhood, and I took it down because I wasn't at a place where I wanted to be questioned about the validity of it. However, there were other factors into why I took it down as well, and one of them was my grandmother that I just lost. And there's probably going to be a lot more of me discussing things that are hard and trauma related as I move forward with this channel, because that's how it's going to have to be, whether or not I he was not anywhere involved or around the cult, and so unfortunately that meant I introduced him to a whole world of crap that he had never been around and didn't know anything about. But that meant that I have a wonderful supportive husband that has been there and been my rock through the last, let's see here, we've known each other 18 years now, and we have been married for 16 and a half. So we have 5 children, and you know, that in itself is a story of why we have 5. We were only going to have 3, and our twins surprised us, and I wasn't very happy about that for pretty much the whole pregnancy. So, you know, that's been its own journey. I love my grandparents, and this might be a little choppy, but you know, grief is hard when you lose someone you love, but I think it's even harder when it's a complicated grief. And I'm going to explain for a second. When I think I was about 16, my sister and I were staying for a few days at my mother's mom's house, who is my grandmother that I still do currently have, my last remaining grandparent. I don't remember what she asked or what she said or what I said or what my sister said, but in the course of that week and that visit, something was said that alerted my grandmother to the abuse that was going on in the house. And she and my other grandparents had never approved of my parents joining the cult. They didn't really approve of how many children that my parents had, but my parents had used that as like attempted leverage at getting to turn us against our grandparents and not trust them by saying, you know, we can't do anything right. You know, they never approved of any decision that we've ever made. I don't know how I saw through that, but as a 16-year-old, like, I knew I could trust my grandmother. But there was a humongous element of what we experienced in the abuse that was, it was so bad that there have been those that have labeled it sadistic and torture, and I shouldn't be alive. So that's the level of abuse we're talking about. I was ashamed because, you know, we were told all the time that it was our fault, that we deserved everything that we got because we were such rebellious children. So we weren't going to like go over to our grandparents' house and be like, oh yeah, this is what we are living every single day, because we were so ashamed. And we believed that we deserved it. And to some extent, like I look back at my childhood and I knew I didn't deserve a lot of what I was getting, and there was no way I could win in a lot of situations. But to some extent, you know, you're still not going to go as a child and talk about punishments that you are getting. And so anyway, I don't remember how it all went down, but I found out later that my grandmother on that side had called my other grandparents, who were both still alive, my dad's parents, and SOS'd basically a meeting and forced my parents into a meeting that basically was we found out what's going on to some extent, and if this does not stop, we are going to report you. And things changed drastically from then forward. Now, not for the better, unfortunately, but it was on the surface level enough to make my grandparents believe that my parents had stopped and changed. And part of the element, and before I want to get this out there because I know there's going to be people that ask, my grandparents all lived in a different state, and I found out later in my life that at least my dad's parents were terrified of Child Protective Services, and my grandmother at one point told me when I was really angry, asking why that they didn't do more, I heard the fear in her voice, and she said, you know, there were 8 of you. You lived in a different state. If we had called, we would have probably never seen you again. Now, I have learned enough to know that probably isn't true. I just don't know. Like even if we were placed in a different state, I still think family would have been who we went to, but I don't know. I don't know how all that works. I just know that was a fear factor in what she chose to do or not to do. Plus, they also really believed that what they had done stopped the abuse. Unfortunately, my parents figured out more clever ways to do it. It went more psychological, mental, emotional, verbal. There was still physical in there, but by far what happened after that was a lot harder to heal from and to move forward from, because, you know, physical pain goes away, but all these other ones don't. So that's kind of the backstory. And then I grew up and went through, you know, the stages of dating and getting married and having children, and I just wanted to forget my childhood and move on. And because I'm the second oldest, I'm 15 years older than my youngest brother, and so when my husband and I got married, the 5 of my younger siblings were still minors, and my parents were very manipulative, and my relationship with them, or the ability to have it or lack thereof, was manipulated into my compliance on certain levels. And so to not lose access to siblings who I had given myself the job of protecting, and I had raised the two youngest boys pretty much up until I had left the house, that wasn't a choice that I regret making. Is like, I had to play ball to a certain level. And so there was an element of, let's just not talk about it and let's move on. And I couldn't really pretend it didn't happen, but my husband and I got hit with a series of life events that threw us just into survival mode with life. And so trauma wasn't something that I could deal with at that time. So I think that lulled everybody into a sense of, okay, well, Erica's fine. And, you know, she's still talking to her parents. So, you know, what we did back then really worked and everything is okay. And, you know, it happened, but let's just not talk about it. That leads us to, you know, when my youngest sibling finally came of age and I didn't have to play ball anymore. I was nearing the point of going no contact with my parents when life threw us yet the other curveball that I mentioned a minute ago of me being surprised pregnant with twins. And I was not prepared. I didn't want it. I was so angry. I was barely figuring out how to survive as a mother with all of my trauma with 3 children. And my oldest son is also autistic and has severe ADHD. So I was already overwhelmed, and we were already struggling financially, and it was like, and don't come at me, terminating the pregnancy was not an option in my brain. So it is what it is. We discussed giving the boys up for adoption, but like, I think trauma brain took over at that point, and I was like, no, I can't trust that someone else isn't gonna hurt my children, and they're mine. And so anyway, they're 6 now and they're precious, but they're fun. But so that put me at yet another standstill in making the decision to go no contact with my parents, because I was just trying to survive that. So it was sometime after the twins turned 1, it was like probably a few months later, they were about 6 months old, when I finally worked up the courage to go no contact with my parents. And there, of course, is a whole lot of story here and a whole lot of details that I'm not addressing. They may come up in later videos, but this is just a really brief of how we got here. When I went no contact, you know, I still had my 3 remaining grandparents, but I didn't know how long I had left with them. I sent them the letter of no contact of January of 2020, so timeline-wise. I did it very quietly because I didn't want to involve my grandparents, and that was a personal decision that I made on my part. I love all 3 of them very, very much, and while I don't agree when I look back as to how they handled everything, I do know that in their way that they loved me, and I just didn't want to include them in this. Then we lost my grandfather unexpectedly, which I did make a video of the memory bears and dinosaurs that I made out of his shirts and handkerchiefs for my kids and me when he died suddenly in 2020. That played a huge role into me taking a step back and not saying anything and being very quiet. And on this side of my family that I just lost my grandmother, I have a ton of cousins and aunts and uncles. With that many people, I just didn't want I haven't really made a big deal about my channel to my family, but I didn't want somebody to find it and be like, oh my gosh, look at what Erica has shown. My grandmother wasn't willing to talk about it. I knew she wasn't willing to talk about it. I didn't like that, but for the sake of not tainting the remainder of the time that I had left with her, that's the way it was. We went to see her last October, and that was the last time we saw her. And I had been planning to go see her and take my kids to see her this past summer, but my parents, through a series of events, were staying in the backyard of her house, which meant we couldn't go and not run into them. And so we weren't able to go, and so that did play into the complication of my grief and anger when she died, was because we didn't get the last time that I wanted to see her in. However, we did talk every month, so I don't have any regrets. I did what I knew I could. A couple days before Halloween, word went out that she was in the hospital, but it didn't seem serious other than I knew my grandmother and I knew that she didn't want to live anymore. She married my grandfather when she was 17. They had spent their entire life together, and she had missed him for the last 4 years and just didn't want to be here anymore. So she really didn't have anything she was fighting for. So that was a worry, but again, nothing was really serious sounding until a Wednesday. And then all of a sudden, everything started, like text message threads just went absolutely nuts that they didn't think she was going to make it through the night. Now remember, I'm still in a different state. She was already not responding. Wednesday night, my aunt called me and put the phone to her ear, and I choked through sobbing out a goodbye. It's not something that I had prepared for or that I was ready for. That was really hard. They didn't think she was going to make it through the night. Thursday morning came, and she was still here with us, and I looked at my husband and I said, I have to try. I have to try. My parents were overseas at that moment. They were trying to get back, but I knew that they wouldn't get back before I could get there. So that would mean I would have the opportunity to be with extended family without them there to taint it if I went then. So we got a family friend to pick up the kids from school. We dropped them all off, and he took off work, and we hopped in the car and drove 3 hours. And unfortunately, I was about 5 minutes too late. So we stayed for a couple hours and cried and hugged family. I saw a couple of my siblings, and then we had to book it back. The lady that was watching our kids had told us not to worry about it. She was getting the kids supper. She'd picked them all up from school and everything. But we wanted to take the kids trick-or-treating. Somehow we made it safely back in time, basically to throw a couple of bites in our mouths and then throw the kids' costumes in the back of the vehicle, go over to the lady's house that had them, help them get in their costumes, and take them trick-or-treating. And I just didn't have it. I sat there and cried with my daughter and apologized. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I have not been that emotionally done and exhausted in a very long time, and physically exhausted. And I was like, I don't have it. I can't put all this costume on. And of course, my sweet girl, she completely understood, and we took the kids trick-or-treating and tried to keep it as normal as possible. But like I said, the costume just for me wasn't something that was going to happen. And that's okay. I'll put it on eventually. But again, the element of complicated grief is that when I think trauma in the family is involved, that adds a level of complication. I didn't agree with what my grandmother had done. And I did have to deal over the last few years with feelings of anger and betrayal and all of that, in that I feel like my family should have done more. It is what it is, and at least versus, I know my parents don't care one snitch about me, and they've made that very clear, and they hate me, and they're the abusive ones. I know that my other family, while I don't agree with how things were handled, I know that they love me, so that's what I'm gonna have to hold on to here. I got hit with all of that complicated grief, and this channel was just not something that I could care about, honestly. And then we got thrown into the throes of end of the year Christmas stuff and band concerts and all of the stuff that goes into the end of the year with the school year for 5 children in school. A couple of kids got sick. That is why we are here. And this may seem really like choppy and like I don't know if I've even finished the story, but you know what? This is where we are. So, as far as this channel is concerned, I know I've mentioned that I named it Sewing is Therapy for a reason. Sewing has always been therapy for me, helped me through. There was a particular video that I had earlier this year. Got seen a little bit more than some of my other videos, which kind of surprised me, and I got a lot of negative comments on it. It was one of the vintage dresses that I had made. There's a lot of people with a lot of mouths that need to shut their mouths on the internet. I'm just going to be very honest, and that kind of put a dampener on a lot of things. So I feel like going forward, I just want to make it very, very clear that whatever I do choose to do with this channel, whether it be a costume, whether it be a retro dress or a vintage dress or a fantasy costume or whatever, I literally do not care if it is historically accurate. I literally do not care if I took shortcuts that people don't think I should have taken. I literally don't care. This is my channel, and I cannot afford, literally, financially, cannot afford to make a whole bunch of stuff just for a channel that I will not wear, or that my daughter will not wear, or that my kids will not wear, or that I don't have plans for to sell eventually, or something like that. And to make something wearable to me means that there's a chance I'm going to change a pattern. There's a chance I'm going to change something. And I don't care. All I have to say is, for me to be real about what I can accomplish and what I can do with this channel, I'm not going to be able to, for one, keep up with the every other week schedule. I can't do it. I had a job a couple years ago and I had to quit it because I literally could not physically keep up with the job and 5 children and being a wife, having a relationship with my husband, which is, you know, top priority for me and Matt, and just couldn't do it. Also, YouTube's algorithm has never worked in my favor, and, you know, theoretically, this would have been nice if this had turned into a stream of income, but I still not nowhere even close to that happening. That's not really where my dream lies anyway. My dream has always been to have my own business in regarding something to my sewing. So I'm going to be refocusing a lot of my energy that I did last year into just thinking of something to make that I thought might grab the algorithm's attention into what I actually want to do. And that will mean that I talk about my childhood. That will mean that I address what's going on. That will mean that not every video is going to be this nice sewing video. That will mean that it won't be as many videos. I'm working actively towards getting the business that I want up and running. Eventually, once I get my website, which that's the next step in this plan, you know, there are a couple of the costumes that I made last year and the year before. I probably will eventually sell those if someone wants them, because I just don't have room for costumes to be sitting around. You know, the last couple of months of the grieving process has not been without projects. I have done a few. I made my daughter a winter dress, which she specifically requested. I made a dear friend of mine a matching set of aprons for her and her daughters. That was just an absolute joy. They're going through childhood cancer with their youngest child right now, and that is, you know, that through another level of what I was dealing with in here is, you know, when you're walking with a friend through something very difficult. Those turned out absolutely adorable, and I have plans for aprons and stuff, particularly like matching aprons, because she had told me specifically that she was having a hard time finding like matching mommy-daughter aprons that she could get more than one with the adult apron, because she's got 4 girls. And so I specifically, you know, made her like stair-step sizes 5 matching aprons, and they turned out so cute. I would show them, but they have their names on them, and for their privacy, I'm not going to. But I used a vintage book that I found, and where it just kind of had the like, do this. It didn't have an actual pattern. You had to draw your own pattern, and that was a lot of fun. And they have several others in there, but that was another project that I did. I made the memory quilts for my twins, which that will go on this channel eventually. I have started this back when I only had 3 children, and I was only anticipating making 3 of these. That changed, but I kept my favorite of either outfit or bib or pajamas or something from the time they were infants all the way up to when they basically started kindergarten or made it through their first year of kindergarten, and then turned it into a memory quilt and gave it to them. And that has been the favorite of all 3 of my older ones, and the twins have been wanting to know when theirs were going to get done for a really long time. So that happened over this break as well, and I'm pretty excited. I did film that process, but that's basically the only thing I filmed. Also, one thing that I realized over the last couple of months of not working on anything for this channel is that again, in an attempt to do something to attract the algorithm of YouTube, I let anything that was what I would label my actual hobbies go away, because it was just the constant sewing. What can I come up with? What can I sew for the channel? And as I guess I'm kind of demonstrating right now, I have other hobbies as well. Oh, yeah, one of them being crochet, which that's another project I did over the last couple months, is I crocheted a baby blanket for a friend of mine that is about to have a baby. And I don't have it up here with me, or I'd show you. I think it's really cute. But I love cross stitch and painting, and I also am writing, and I've been writing for a long time, and that is actually going to take top priority for a little bit, because I've had a lot of people come to me over the last few years and basically begged me. I mean, honestly, it's been begging. I wish I was exaggerating a little bit, because it kind of makes me feel like I'll get to it, to write my story down in all of its horridness as a child, and dealing with the trauma as an adult, and parenting past trauma, and breaking abusive cycles. And yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me to tell my story, and I want to. That has been a goal of mine for years. And I made a lot of progress up until I lost my grandmother on it, and then it just stopped for the rest of the year. So I haven't picked it up in a couple of months at all. And I want to, and I want that to actually take priority over sewing for a little bit, as far as like just sewing random projects. I'm still going to be working towards getting a business website up and running, and I think part of my eventual goal with that is I would like it to turn into a website where I can sell things that I make, but also, like, there are a few projects. Well, there is a historically inspired project that I really want to do that's been on the list for quite some time, and that is a Tudor court era gown. And now, it's not going to be historically accurate in any way, shape, or form. Fabrics that I'm using for it, that I already have set aside for it, are mostly upholstery fabrics that I found, and a shower curtain, I believe, which it'll make sense when I show it. I work off of largely what I find at thrift stores, but there were a couple of these that I found a whole roll of it, and that's like 50 yards of fabric, and obviously you don't need 50 yards of fabric for one project. And so get to a point where, you know, I can make a project and then sell the rest of the fabric to other people that may want to, that fall in love with it or want to use it or whatever, so that it just doesn't sit around my sewing room forever. So have a place where I can sell off extra fabrics that I'm finished with the project that I was going to do, and there's extra, or, you know, something like that. Yeah, so I will, like I said, be working on that, but I'm no longer going to throw away all of my other hobbies and stuff just because I need to come up with the perfect vintage dress pattern to put on the internet, especially when, honestly, while it got probably more views than any other of my videos, I think it was the red one, it also got so much, like I said, so much negative attention that it was like the amount of people that had the audacity online to come on and tell a stranger how she needs to do her hair and makeup, and like how she needs to make something that she's making for herself is mind-boggling to me. And I don't say that as someone that's angry or mad about it. It is literally mind-boggling to me. Like, I'm a 40-year-old woman, and I'm going to make what I want to make, how I want to make it, and that's how it's gonna be. Yeah, people that were like, you need a makeover. I don't remember my sewing video asking anyone how I should do my hair or makeup. Anyway, that's another story. So not only was, you know, I letting that kind of run things, but it's like I didn't even want it to. So I know this has been long and chatty, but I figured I would come on and just kind of catch everybody up and let everybody know. That means that, oh, also treating the channel like it is, as far as the fact that it is a pure hobby that doesn't make me anything. And that was also one of the reasons that I was trying so hard to post bi-weekly on a regular schedule all year last year, was because, you know, that's one of those things that they say to do to, you know, work with the algorithm, to get seen. Well, it didn't work, and I can't sustain it. And, you know, if this was a job and it was making me money, then maybe I could, obviously then I would prioritize it more, but it's not. So it's a hobby. It's gonna have to be treated like a hobby. I do enjoy making the videos, or I would just stop. So that's why we're here. So anyway, here's my cross stitch that I'm working on. So if you can't tell, and if you've been around this channel anywhere for a while, you probably already know what this picture is, because they are literally everywhere. But I love pandas so much. That's gonna be the finished picture. So I'm trying to do everything that fit in the hoop for this side, and then I'm gonna move down and do down here and work my way around. Also on my bucket list this year is to teach myself how to knit, which I know may surprise a lot of people in this community that I don't currently know how to knit. I have just never done it. I've been crocheting since I was about 7 years old, but there have been a few projects that I have seen and wanted to tackle recently that I could not do crochet. There's not a crochet stitch that would make what I want to make. I want to knit myself a couple of sweaters. I want to teach myself how to do that. We have a recraft store near us, which, oh my gosh, that is either the best thing or the worst thing, depending on how you look at it, for my life. I was able to get a sizable collection of knitting needles for like $5. So I was very, very happy that it's not a huge investment up front for me to do that. I'm just gonna pull up a whole bunch of videos on YouTube, teach myself how to do it. I already have a sizable yarn stash for my crochet habits, so I don't even need yarn. As far as how this looks for the channel, I'm not gonna sit here and say that, oh, everything I try I'm gonna put it on the channel, or, you know, every video will be this or every video will be that. But I might talk about my book a little bit. I might talk about things while I'm sewing, while I'm crocheting, while I'm knitting, while I'm doing something else. I might not. I might completely just leave something off the channel and then either like show a finished product when it's done, or just be working on it in the background and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm working on while I'm talking. Who knows? I'm here for it. I'm here for the ride. I had to get over a little bit of a depression hunk after my grandmother passing, and I will eventually put my costume on and get it all on and do a photo shoot with my daughter. It will happen when it happens, and I'm not gonna put the pressure on myself to do it before I'm ready to do it. It's hanging in my closet. It's not gonna go anywhere. As far as how often I post, it's all up in the air. We'll see. I will see with you, because I don't know. So if any of this chaos that I have talked about and the realities of being a sewist, of trying to start some type of business, of this being a hobby, of trying to learn something new, of writing a book, of being a mom of 5, a wife, past trauma, you know, if you feel like sticking around for that in any of its capacity, I appreciate you and thank you. And I appreciate all the people that said very, very kind words on my post when I let everybody know that my grandmother had passed away. I was in shock that day and just still numb. I think that's it, and I hope that everyone had a wonderful holiday season and a Merry Christmas. I don't want to end this on a negative point. We had a wonderful Christmas. It was a very relaxing day with our kids. We didn't go anywhere, and you know, they always have the best reactions, and we had some pretty amazing finds for some pretty amazing deals of things that we knew that they wanted, and it was a wonderful day. And I hope that everyone has a happy new year. So thanks for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one whenever that comes.